This is HTML lesson number 68. The toughest part in creating a web page is deciding what to present on your web page. Once you acquire the material you wish to present, then you have to decide the best way to present the material. Remember, if your web page material is interesting and if it's presented in an eye-catching way, then people will take the time to view your web page. Now, after saying all of that, let's say this. Do you like the way my web page looks so far? Take a look at it. Do you like how it looks so far? Well, I seriously doubt it. Okay, you say, well, that looks terrible. It looks bland, uninteresting. Nobody's going to take a look at this. What are we going to do about that? Well, let's do something about that. Let's go ahead and open up Notepad++. Okay. And let's begin. Let's see if we can make this a little more interesting. Okay. Alrighty. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we'll put it just like that. Now, do you remember in a previous lesson when we used the style tag? Let's use it again. And don't forget your closing style tag. It can cause you a lot of nightmares if you forget it. Alrighty. Now in this particular lesson, we're going to introduce you to something called a selector. Now, a few videos ago, I introduced you to the Id Selector. You said, well, that was the ID attribute. Well, in the body of the web page was the ID attribute, but between the style tags, the opening and closing style tags, we had the Id selector. It started with a pound sign, and then you wrote down the ID. Okay? Now, in that same manner, we're going to have a class selector. Okay? Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do this. Whoops. This is called the class selector. When you have a period, it's called a class selector. If you have a pound sign, it's called an ID selector. And this time we're going to be selecting any tag that has the class of my paragraphs. Okay. Now, we're going to make a declaration. Okay. You say, what declaration are we going to make this time? Well, it's called... Oops. And this one is going to be... I did this as experimentation earlier. Okay. So let's lower this down just a little bit so you can see it. Okay. This is our first declaration. We're going to have a few more. The second one is going to be Times New Roman, because that's what we want the font to look like. And unless you want the elderly to be squinting at your web page, I would suggest adding the next declaration, which is font size. And this time we're going to have 25 point. Okay, just like this. Now here's the thing. If you forget the closing brace, you're going to have a nightmare on your hands. Okay? So you have to have your opening brace and your closing brace. Don't forget them. Alright. Now then, if we have head tags, we're going to have body tags too. That's just a given. Okay. Now then, you say, well, how are we going to get all of this text that we were reading earlier in the video into this particular web page? I'm going to show you how to do that. First, you're going to place opening and closing paragraph tags. Alright. I'm going to show you that right here. We have opening and closing paragraph tags. I wish Notepad++ had a better scroll bar, but they don't. So I'm going to move my camera down just a little bit so you can see all this. And I know, whoopsie. Okay. Alright, now we're down into this section where we need to do our work. Okay, now you say, well, how are we going to copy all that text from what we had to this? Alright, I want you to take a look down here. All computer keyboards have this. We have a left cursor key, a right cursor key, a down cursor key, and an up cursor key. And we're going to be using that in just a moment. Okay. Now then, let's go ahead and raise this back up for just a second. Then we're going to lower it down again. I know you're sitting there going, whoa, man, funky time. It was all very necessary, trust me. Okay, now, thanks for bearing with me. We're back up to this. Now, what's the next thing we're going to do? We're going to hit Control A, and that means we're going to hold down the Control button and we're going to press the letter A. And when we do, all this text is highlighted. Check it out. Now we're going to hold down the Control button and we're going to press the letter C. Now then, we're going to open up Notepad++. We're going to drop our little camera down again. So, man, what a trip. Sorry about all this. And now we're going to hit, we're actually going to hold down the Control button and we're going to press the letter V. And voila! There is our text. Now we can scroll a little bit. Okay, there it is, people. Now then, what's the first thing you're going to notice here? You're going to notice some white space between here, between this paragraph and this one. The problem is it's not going to show up on your web page unless you do something about it. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to place a closing paragraph tag here. And then we're going to delete like that. And then we're going to place an opening paragraph tag right here. Okay. That way now we have two paragraphs. Okay. Now, why did we use the class selector? Because we want this paragraph indented and then we also want this paragraph indented. And in order to get both paragraphs indented without using two ID attributes and two ID selectors, instead of using two ID selectors and two ID attributes, we're going to use one class selector and one class attribute. Okay? Alright. Let's do it. Let's add the class attribute. Okay? Now then, I want you to hold down your shift button. Then you're going to use your mouse like this. Whoops. Dang it. Alright. Then you're going to go Control C. You're going to hold down the Control button. You're going to press the letter C. And then you're going to hold down the Control button. You're going to press the letter V. And you're going to get rid of that extra greater than sign. Okay? And you'll put a space right here. Okay. That means you got a paragraph tag. You've got a class attribute, which is going to lead you to the class selector. Which is going to cause everything that we want to happen. Okay. Now then, it's time to raise the camera back up. I know, one more little trip. Sorry about all this. So why do we have to raise the camera back up? Because we're going to save all of our work. We're going to click File, Save As, and then we're going to type in text underscore indent.html. And we're going to save our work. Alright. Then we're going to open up the HTML student folder. We're going to double click text indent. And voila. The paragraphs are indented. And more importantly, okay, this is in Times New Roman font. And look at how big the text is. Isn't that neat? You say, well, okay, this is easy to read. No question about that. The paragraphs are indented. No question about that. But it's still kind of bland. It's still kind of boring. That's true. But this is a major improvement on what we had at the beginning of this video. Now you say, can we improve this further? Absolutely. Let's do it. All right. Let's go back over here. What we're going to do is going to go down here. Right there. We are going to add, okay, we're going to add an Id selector. You say, why are we going to do that? You'll see. Okay, let's take a look at this. This is our Id selector for a tag that we're going to identify as span color. And you can see the color we're going to select is blue. Now, where do we want to place these span tags? Let's scroll up just a bit. Where we want to place them is right over here at the word remember. Okay? And I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, we have span, ID, span color, just like that. Whoa. See, our camera is still a little tippy here. Okay, now if we have an opening span tag, we also have to have a closing span tag. I'm going to type it in right now. If we don't, this web page will cease to work. Say, well, where's the closing span tag? It's right over here with this paragraph tag. We have a closing span tag. We have a closing paragraph tag. And then we have the opening paragraph tag for the next round, okay? Now then, we are going to save our project again. As soon as I can find my area, go. Okay. Now then, we're going to open up textindent.html. That's going to be in our HTML student folder, as you already know. And voila! Now we've emphasized this particular sentence, okay, this particular sentence in our web page. And I think you can understand why. What does this particular sentence say? It says, remember. That means we want you to remember this. If your web page material is interesting, and if it's presented in an eye-catching way, then people will take the time to view your web page. And that is something very important to remember. And that's why we emphasized it in blue. Wow. So that will draw people's attention. Okay. Now I bet you're saying, okay, what else can we do with a web page? Well, we're going to answer that in the next video. But I think you're beginning to realize just how interesting your web pages can actually become. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video, so I want you to stay tuned.